When Ravi invited me to talk here at Design Indaba, I was struck by his thoughts about this idea of Africa's next vanguard. And it got me thinking that Africa's next vanguard is dependent on advancement on many fronts. So notice the Sahara Desert up there. People often say that it's a physical, geographic problem that cut out Africa from several revolutions that happened around the world. Obviously, there was connection through trade with ships, the globalization story that started age-old from 15th, 16th century. But I'm here to share some stories about how technology, people, and creative networks can give us a different glimpse of this continuing story of how Africa's next vanguard can be one of possibility, of progress, and of fun. So this is a map of the undersea fibre-optic cable that was done by a South African, Steve Song. What I find amazing about this map is that Africa is transcending its geography problem. But then if you look closely at the links, it still sort of mirrors the old world way of looking at the world. It still mirrors the way the ships would move around the world. There is great opportunity in interconnecting the insides of Africa, continuing to connect Africans to Africans, South Africa to Kenya, South Africa to Egypt, South Africa to Addis. This is the challenge, and this is the last windmill to tilt at. The first windmill that we tilted at, myself and David Kobia, Eric Hersman, and the Ushahidi team, is one of information flow. Because as we all know, with connection comes a flow of information and a way to experience and to be in the world that is different, that is not just different, but a true exploration of who we are. Ushahidi is the Swahili word for witness or testimony. Ushahidi, the software, allows for people to share their story.
Our mantra revolves around three things: the crowd, verification, and response.
Ushahidi is free and open source. Anybody can go to the web and download it and run their own platform tomorrow. It's that simple.
It allows a citizen to report, to indicate, hey, this is what's going on. The underlying thing is they can use whichever device they have in their pocket. And all that information is brought into a central location and mapped. So what we call geolocation.
The big mission that we're on. It's really to change the way information flows in the world, to give ordinary people a voice.
Ushahidi came about after the post-election violence in Kenya in early 2008. The election went south. The media houses were shut down. During that time, we started to see reports of violence come in on our blogs.
That very first week is when we built out this platform as this mashup of information coming from ordinary citizens, news reports, and we just plotted them on a map.
We just did what we could. We could do something. We didn't realize it would have this much of an impact.
Now, Ushahidi is available in more than 30 languages, in more than 159 countries.
There have been over 30,000 deployments of Ushahidi around the world.
Major impact in places like Haiti, Japan, Pakistan, Libya, you know, it's all over the world now.
One of the projects that we're working on in Kenya is that of the election.
Since our entire existence is out of the previous election in Kenya, we feel like it is our duty this time to be completely prepared for it. Today we have a really big meeting of people coming in to help us create this platform. It's not just us, it is for everyone, by everyone.
It's really about a free, fair, open Kenya elections and using Ushahidi's technology and knowledge about how to do crowdsourcing in order to make it so.
What technology does is give everyone a voice that was not there before. In a sense, it democratizes information. And then done the right way, it makes things a little more transparent.
The MacArthur Award will help this institution leverage technology in the service of citizens.
I think there's no better feeling of gratification that one can have than taking something that you hope can change the world and seeing it happen.
So just to give you a little bit of context, when I showed you the previous map of the undersea cables, when Ushahidi came into being, it was when the internet connectivity in Kenya was 8%. We had horrible connections. It was terribly slow. And it's been a long journey. It takes a team and it takes a community. And with the elections coming up in South Africa and other parts of Africa, I'd like to just quickly share that it wasn't an easy journey, but one of the key things that helped us to get to where we are right now is, one, to bet on open source software, which there are very key links between the idea of open source from Richard Stallman to the ideas of Ubuntu that South Africans hold pretty dear. And one of the things that we did was to make this the code open source, so it's available on ushahidi.com. And the key thing is it allows citizens to participate, to be part of the process, to say, I am here, and this is what I see, and this is what is going on. And also, we did not get into this because we had experience in humanitarian work. It's because we just wanted to do something, and we wanted to use our skills to assist at that particular time. And with the support of individuals like Pierre Omidyar and Humanity United, MacArthur Foundation was able to give us a bit of rocket fuel to get to the next level. And since then, we've seen not just use cases around elections, we've also seen disaster response. Just recently, around the Ukraine protests, there is a community of Ushahidi open source enthusiasts who live in the Ukraine, and they've been using that to map out the protests, and most importantly, the people who need assistance and those who can provide assistance. And we've also seen this with disaster response from Japan to Haiti and countless other countries. And when it comes to elections, I'd like to just share that the key thing to learn from our experience in Kenya, for those of you who decide to use the software for the upcoming South African elections or other elections around Africa, is that the voices of the citizens revolutionize the world, that it's really, really important to look local, to ask what is going on. And you can use this platform to tackle whatever issue you care about. Is it environmental degradation? Is it finding the best burger in South Africa? The options for crowdsourcing are endless. And one of the key things is, when we started out in 2008 and grew into 2009, the question of scale. How do you scale? This is a really big question for a lot of technologists and for a lot of products that people make. The question is, how do you get this into more countries around the world? For us, the biggest lesson in scaling was, one, translation. It was really important to make sure that the platform was available in a language that people could connect to. How many of you speak more than one language? Out of those languages that you speak, when you hurt your foot, which one do you say ouch in? You know what I'm talking about, right? So that particular language, that's your emotional language. And to be able to scale, you need to be able to tap into that emotional language so that people can take something, ideally open source, and make it their own, so that it's not just Ushahidi from Kenya, that it's Ushahidi that is relevant to that particular person and relevant to the issue that they're dealing with. That was our biggest lesson. And localization in other forms, which can take the script where some, like Arabic, it goes from left to right, to make sure that your software works that way, to enable the people there to use it. The other thing, and then what one could also point to the fact that we ran a lean organization, and we kept it a distributed team that is all over the world. We often say that as long as you're good and awesome, we don't care where you live. And that has really helped us. And the diversity of opinion and the diversity of inputs into what makes Ushahidi this global organism that it is. But I think the key characteristic is this idea that we use function to drive the technology. And as designers who are here and those in simulcast, to keep a keen eye on this question of function, because it can help us to push the boundary of what is possible with technology. I saw this again and again. You know, with Ushahidi, we've been around, this is our 6th year, but sometimes, you know, you forget. So September of last year, there was a terrible attack, a Westgate attack at a mall in Nairobi. It was a very rough time for one of our colleagues, the COO of our subsidiary, Philip Walton. His family was stuck in the mall. We found that when we were checking on each other, that it was not a very efficient system, because we had to call one person and say, have you called this other person? Are they okay? And I'm really, really honored to be standing in front of you to represent an organization of conscientious people. When we saw that this was a problem, we actually created a solution, which is the Ping app, that enabled small teams to figure out, are you okay in a time of crisis? So this is a very new tool that we're adding to the many tools that Ushahidi has made. And this conscientiousness extends to this idea of opening up the door for others. So in 2010, when Ushahidi needed a presence in Kenya, we needed an office, basically, but we didn't want to just have an office, like, you know, a regular office. So what we did was we, in conjunction with our funders at the time, we decided to open up the first co-working space in Nairobi, and this became the Ihub. And this goes back to some of the questions that go to Ravi's idea of Africa's next vanguard. And it's this idea of investing in creative networks, opening up the door for others to connect. So the Ihub became the space where VCs could connect with entrepreneurs. Geeks can just be comfortable being geeks, because we absolutely need the internet. And with the Ihub, we had the best connection possible, and we still do have the best connection possible thanks to CCOM and a few other partners. But the idea is that you create a petri dish, almost, where people engage and collaborate and just laugh together and figure things out. And I think that's continuing that story of Ushahidi, or of technology, and not just ending with Ushahidi and M-Pesa. M-Pesa is the most popular mobile banking solution that has come out of East Africa, and it's often cited when people talk about innovation. So we don't want that story to end just with Ushahidi and M-Pesa. And to do that, you've got to create these places where people are collaborating and doing things together, and Ihub is one of them. And since its founding in 2010, particularly spearheaded with Eric and the team there, it's grown to over 11,000 members, and we've been able to incubate over 48 startups. And we hope that this story continues. And I think we're very, very encouraged when we see this idea spreading around Africa. So there are other hubs like the Ihub that learn from the hub model. AfriLabs is this consortium that puts together all these labs together. And there's one here in Cape Town that is coming online soon. It's Warehouse 17, that I hope will be also part of this amazing Africa-wide, perhaps Pan-African network of a new ecosystem of technology. What ties all of these things together is just this idea of doing what you can with what you have and where you are, and to bring together people and look at the local context to solve the local problems. So I moved back to Kenya towards the end of 2011. Eric had already been back for a year. And one thing that remains, despite the leaps in progress, one of the showstoppers is when the electricity goes out. It is very, very frustrating, because when you're starting to work, when the power goes out and you have to figure out, okay, where's my modem, and you have to connect it, it's really, really a pain. And one of the things is also the high cost of connecting. It costs 5 Kenya shillings to call the US and 30 Kenya shillings to call Rwanda. This is a problem. If I have Skype or other conferencing technologies that require the internet, that cost shifts to 0. Or at least I've already paid for the internet, yes, but then I'm not paying a per minute cost of 30 shillings to call Rwanda or to call within the country. So going back to that early image with the fiber optic cables, the challenge is connecting African countries. And if you've had to travel from one African country to another African country, it's often a problem because the settings in one African country for the internet are also different in another African country. So you have to get the SIM card out, put it in your phone, figure out from the little card, okay, *11# blah, 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 and then enter all of that information, and then you're online. So basically there's a lot of friction in terms of connectivity to the internet. So we have a joke in Ushahidi where we say that if it works in Africa, it'll work anywhere. What if, considering our current reality of these challenges of high cost of connectivity and frequent blackouts, you're probably lucky you don't have to deal with a lot of blackouts, but in Kenya and other African countries like Nigeria, it's a problem. What if we could overcome this problem of unreliable internet and electricity and reduce the cost of connection? Could we possibly leverage cloud-based technology to reduce the friction of going from one African country to another? So we looked at the modem. Modems are designed for societies with ubiquitous electricity and decades of existing infrastructure. They don't have to worry about the problems that we have to worry about. So why are we using that sort of technology? Why aren't we making technology that responds to our local context and our local problems? We set out to redesign the modem for the developing world, for our current reality. What if we could have connectivity with less friction? And this is the brick. You'll see it in the expo, and this is a redesign of the modem. It has 2 important functions. Basically, it's a rugged way to stay connected. When the electricity goes out, it's able to leverage 3G networks, which, thank God, they don't go out when the electricity goes out. And it has 8 to 12 hours of battery life. In essence, it's the backup generator for the internet. For our global team like Ushahidi and other entrepreneurs, the internet is a utility. It's like water. It's what we live and breathe. When it goes down, people get catatonic. You don't want that. Beyond just connectivity, I think the other thing is how can we support the ambitious coders, people who have to deal with these problems to stay online. And we begin by solving the problem for ourselves. And one of the key things that we've learned is that out of adversity can come new ideas of doing different things. More importantly, there's this idea of the internet of people, Facebook, social networks, email, all these different ways that you connect to another person. But then also there's this the Internet of Things, connecting sensors and information to responders, because we are living in an increasingly programmable world. Think of the company called Nest that was recently acquired. What they did is they chained a simple thermostat that to control the heating in your house, so you could do it with your phone. Even remotely, whenever you're not, even if you're not at home, you could still send a command and say, I'm not going to be home for a few days, so turn the thermostat off. And one of the key things that we were thinking about when we were creating the brick is this idea of connecting sensors. What the Nest did for the thermostat, the brick is doing with the router. We want the brick to be the on-ramp for the Internet of Things. This idea of connecting people, I think that's by and large happening. That's very, very important. But then Africa should not be left out of the Internet of Things story, of this idea of a future where we could have a more programmable world. And this is where designers and technologists, it's a whole other open field. What if you could send data remotely and instrument something, turn on a light, turn on a weather station? There's so many things that could possibly happen, but one of the key things that we need is a way to do that. So the brick is designed with GPIO pins where you can connect other sensors to it, so then you can send a command and instrument something. So you could use it for, you could even use it for CCTV, and you can, the space for creativity is yours. You can decide, this is how I'd like to use the pin, this is how I'd like to use the brick to turn this on, to turn this off. It's really a space that we're very, very excited about. So stepping back a little bit, one of the key things that we've asked ourselves as a team is, with all these challenges, what if some of the challenges inspire us to create solutions for the world? And when we look at the adversities, so there were many adversities in terms of developing the brick. The first is we do not have current facilities for 3D printing or quickly prototyping. So we have to prototype or design it in Kenya, send it out, order the parts. Sometimes there's a longer lead time in terms of prototyping, testing, and actually going to market. So it's one of the challenges that's really, really difficult, and we hope that with time, with working with different people, that we can change this and shorten that time. And the cost is very high. The cost of materials is very, very high. Our team is we've been very lucky that we can travel between the US and other countries and come back to Kenya, and we have the most hilarious conversations with customs border agents who ask, why are you carrying circuit boards in your bag? I'm like, we need it for prototyping. So the cost of materials is still pretty high, but that does not detract us. And one of the things is also local electronics. Some of the components and the pieces that we need, like Arduino, are hard to find. So these are continuing challenges. And also local financing or seed capital to help us to get to the next level is not readily available. However, we're still connected to the rest of the world, and we've been able to use crowdfunding mechanisms like Kickstarter to help us to fund the first batch of bricks. Last but not least, we paid 100% duty on circuits that we needed. That was really tough. We also deal with different environmental challenges. There's dust. You need to make a device that is strong enough so that you don't have the dust getting into the circuits. And also, one of the things that we deal with is this dirty voltage. You want the circuit to be well designed so that when you plug it in, it doesn't fry when there's a power surge, because those are actual problems that people have to deal with. Despite the challenges, we still get to have fun. I'll let that sink in for a moment. We stress test our gear in the harshest of conditions. Last year, when there was once in 72-year eclipse. This was a huge eclipse. You could best see it in Lake Turkana, towards Lake Turkana. I went to Ngong Hills, and the rest of the team went to Turkana to try and stream the eclipse using the brick. This is a glimpse of what happened. So there's a lot more to do regarding connectivity. We stress tested to make sure that we can provide this solution. If you just look at the percentages of what's possible in the developing world, just in Africa itself, we have 15.6% penetration of the internet. There is way more to do. And there is a link between increasing connectivity and GDP. Investment in increasing connectivity is worthwhile. If you increase broadband by 10%, it corresponds to 1.163% in GDP. So if there are three things to just remember out of this talk today, is that investment in technology, people, and creative networks can help us to make sure that Africa's next vanguard is truly something that we are a part of, we are fostering and creating a new ecosystem, a new way of connecting African countries one to each other, and a new way of being. Thank you very much.